Hello and welcome to Trial TV Live. I am the Squeegee of Justice. Thank you so much for joining us today as we are continuing our coverage of Georgia versus Colin Gray. We are in day one of verdict watch because the jury wanted to start deliberating yesterday, but it got too late for them, so they went home. So welcome in everybody. All right, audio sounds good there. Audio sounds good there. All right, welcome in, guys. Nita Sue, good to see you. Sod Girl, thank you for joining us. Hellwriter, good to see you. Aussie Gardner, hello. Alice, good morning, Itty Bitty. Thank you for joining us. Stand for the Truth, good to see you. Diva D, hello, welcome in. Sharon Kirkland, Aussie, Allison, good to see you as well. All right, so Sharon, I think I got everybody. Mallory, good morning. Lisa Page, welcome to Rabbit Ears. Thank you so much. Hey, Coach Bucklehead, good to see you. You think by 2 p.m.? All right. Miss Business, Red Snap. Teresa, welcome in. Rebecca. Sweet Vampy. Terry, good to see you. Iowa Backyard. Skrubnik, good morning to you. Elaine, hello, welcome in. All right, let's get a poll going. They actually have started, so let me bring us over here. All right, and I'll get a poll going for us. Well, let's hear what they have to say here. Hey, Richard, good morning. Thank you for joining us. All right, let me get a poll going. Doesn't sound like they have any audio yet. All right, so it sounds like they're not on the record yet, so there's no audio. So we're not able to hear this yet. So, but anyway, I'll get a poll going. All right, got a new poll going for you guys. So this is, how long do you think they'll deliberate today? Hey, Poppy, good to see you. Bama Green Eyes, welcome in. Shirley Roth, good to see you. Crunchy Frog, you have mixed feelings about how these cases against parents are charged. Not saying the cases shouldn't be brought, but I don't know under which statute the charges should fit. Cuda Girl, good to see you. Yes, Hellwriter, poll time. So there's no audio yet. I'm hoping they kick in at some point. Well, I know they'll kick in at some point, but hey, Lena Ray, good morning to you. All right, the jury's supposed to be there by 9, so I'm going to go ahead and start our verdict clock at 9. Angelique, Christy, good morning to you. All right, nothing's happening here, so I'm just going to fast forward.
Four-person?
Yeah, we might as
Here we go.
Yeah, my plan is
Judge, you going to tell them that you have sent the charge out so that they know that that's coming from you?
yeah, my plan is to bring the foreperson in, unless y'all want all of them brought in, and tell them that we're sending back what the law allows to go back, giving them the verdict form, the indictment, and a written copy of the charges.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And then Steve, the 3 alternates, doing the other.
You want me to hold this stuff here until you speak with the four-person?
Yeah, we might as well.
Okay.
She's so just for the sake.
All right, so now we actually caught up live. There's really nothing going on, so we didn't miss anything.
Morning.
Morning. Y'all can be seated. So we're about to send out the cart that has all the evidence that the law allows us to send back to the jury. Okay?
Okay.
You are also getting, and I'll give these to Brooks here, you're getting the verdict form. Behind it, paperclip to it, is a copy of the indictment with all of the charges that you're considering. And then you are also, with it, is a written copy of the jury charges that I gave you yesterday, so the law.
Okay.
And you all are just free to begin deliberating. If for any reason all 12 of you are not in the room, somebody takes a smoke break or whatever, pause deliberations until all 12 of you are back. Okay? Brooks, here are those documents. And then I just want to confirm the 3 alternates are in the other jury room. They are. Okay. All right. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. I'm going to grab the pressure plate.
Okay. Thank you.
No, map. I guess there's a picture of the map.
All right. We'll be in recess.
All right, so we are officially in verdict watch. So while we are in verdict watch, I'll go ahead and I'll play like day 1, and we'll just get a feeling for opening statements, and I'll just keep playing past testimony until we have a verdict.
way you go with the flow. Understand that things are going to come up that I have not heard before. I have not heard all the evidence in this case. I've heard very little of it. Sometimes I'm going to need to inquire with the lawyers just so I can speak freely with y'all outside the court. Okay? Now, with that, I'm going to turn it over to the attorneys for opening statements, starting with the state. Thank you. This is the will be shown. Thank you.
Morning. Before we start, one thing needs to be abundantly clear. 2024. It was a Wednesday morning. It was just after the Labor Day holiday. A 14-year-old boy enters Apalachee High School here in Barrow County. It's a new school for him. In fact, he had been out of school completely the entire previous year. And while the school year was already a month old, this was only his 5th day.
Do you guys want the closed captioning or not? Let me know. Yes to closed captioning or no? Do you guys want the closed captioning for the replay or not? Let me know what you think. Yes to closed captioning or no? I'll wait for you guys to answer. Yes to closed captioning or no? Yes to closed captioning? Yep. Let me know if you want the closed captioning for the replay. Yep. Yep. Okay. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. All right. I will continue on.
Day attending school. As he walked through the crowded hallways, he carried his book bag in front of him. And hidden inside that book bag was a 6-hour M400 AR style rifle. This 14-year-old boy has an evil plan. He goes to his first period class, located here. It's a computer science class. He sits down at the table and he puts his book bag with the rifle next to him. At some point during the class, he gets up and approaches the teacher, and he asks her, "Y'all had any active shooter drills?" She says, "Yeah, actually, we had one last week. You were absent." He goes back and sits down. The teacher ponders on this a bit. It's an odd question to ask. She doesn't know this boy very well. He's only been there 5 times. So she emails the school counselor, and she courtesy copies her direct supervisor, the vice principal, about the question the boy had asked. At the end of class, at 9:38, this boy picks up his book bag with the rifle in it, carries it in front of him out of the class, heading to his second period class. But that first period teacher stewed on it a little more, and between the class breaks, she decided, I'm going to go up to the office and find the vice principal and talk to her. But at this very moment, that 14-year-old boy is entering his second period class. It's 9:40 a.m. He takes a seat and he puts that book bag with the rifle in it next to him. 14 minutes later, at 9:54 a.m., that boy gets up, grabs his book bag, and he tells the teacher, I'm going to go to the counseling office, which is located down here. He leaves the class, but he doesn't go down to the counseling office. He goes down what's called J Hall, and he enters the boys' bathroom here. He goes into a stall, locks the stall, and he hides there for the next 26 minutes. Now, 4 minutes before he left second period at 9:50 a.m., the boy's mother calls the school counselor, who's in this suite here. Now, the boy's mother doesn't live here in Winder. She's down in Fitzgerald, Georgia, which is in South Georgia. It's a 4.5-hour drive from here. But the boy that morning has sent some text messages that will bother her. And he's now not answering his phone when they call or try and get a reply. She's worried about his emotional well-being. Now, the counselor had actually met this boy the week before. He had a panic attack at school, went to her office, and was too upset to go back to class. So the counselor and the mother talk on the phone for 8.5 minutes about this boy's emotional well-being. And at the very end of that call, at the end of the 8.5 minutes, for the first time, that mother mentions to the counselor that this boy has access to firearms. This sends a red flag up to the counselor. She immediately hangs up the phone and she calls the vice principal. This phone call was ended at 9:59 a.m. But remember, the boy had already left the classroom 5 minutes before that phone call ended. 5 minutes before the mother said anything about firearms. And he's hiding in this bathroom where no one knows where he is. 7 minutes after the call ends, at 10:06, the vice principal and the school resource officers arrive at a second period class. Now remember, this boy that the vice principal and the SROs are looking for has only been to that class 5 times. And there's another child in that class who has an almost identical name. And that boy has also left the classroom to actually go to the bathroom. He signed out to go to the bathroom. Second period teacher thinks that's who they're asking for and says he just went to the bathroom. Gives the vice principal that boy's backpack. And the vice principal and the school resource officers head down to the bathroom to find that boy. That boy's just up in the sinks. He comes out with them, they talk to him, they search his book bag, and they realize this isn't the right kid. He doesn't have computer science for first period. They go back to the class. They arrive there at 10:11, back to the second period class. The teacher then tells them, oh, that child has gone to the counseling office, located here, because that's where he said he was going. Vice principal, school resource officers go to the counselor's office, of course. They haven't seen him. He never made it there. At this point, they decide they're going to go look on the security cameras, see if they can locate this boy. They go down this hall, and it's not on this map. You'll see a more full map later. So around this area is where the vice principal's office is that has access to the security cameras. So they're about right here. At 10:18, the vice principal emails the second period teacher. When did he leave your class? They're trying to locate when exactly he left because remember, this boy's only been there 5 days. They don't really know what he looks like. So they're trying to find him on the video surveillance equipment. So she emails at 10:18, when did he leave your class? 2 minutes later at 10:20, second period teacher responds, he left towards the beginning of class. That's 10:20 a.m. when that email was sent. 1 minute later, at 10:21 a.m., that boy exits the bathroom he'd been hiding in. He's now wearing yellow work gloves. He's carrying that Sig Sauer M400 AR style rifle concealed with a poster board. And he walks back down J Hall towards his second period class. Now, when the vice principal had left that class to go look for him in the counselor's office, she shut the door behind her, and the door automatically locked. This boy is not going to be able to get into his second period class. But next door was another classroom. Right here. It was taught by Cassandra Ryan. and Stephen Edwards. And inside that class were the following students: Landon Adams, Christian Angulo, Jackson Beaver, Hayden Bowen, Jalene Brady, Michaela Brown, William Carricker, Marquez Coleman, Melanie Delira Castaneda, Natalie Griffith, Taylor Jones, Kendez Lawrence, Martin Moreno Galdamez, Tyler Moon, Ariana Norman, Brittany Rubio, Mason Schermerhorn, Ronaldo Vega, and Nautica Walton. At 10:20, Mason Schermerhorn, who's in that room, leaves to go to the bathroom. And the door does not shut behind him. Mason goes down this hallway. He actually passes the shooter in the hallway, and Mason goes into the bathroom. The shooter goes to his second period class. The door's locked. He knocks on the door. A student in that class gets up, goes to the door to open it for him, but sees through the class at the last second him standing there with that rifle. She steps back from the door. At that exact moment, the teachers also reach the door because they've been looking for this boy, remember? And she sees through the glass him standing there outside their door with that 6 Sauer M400. She immediately presses a button on a lanyard that's around her neck that locks down the school. The boy then steps next door to the Ryan Edwards classroom, and he opens fire. He fires discriminately through the classroom. He hits the following victims: Melanie Delira Castaneda, seated here. This is the door he comes into. She's seated here. He strikes her in the left arm with a bullet. Natalie Griffith, seated here, strikes her in the shoulder, the upper arm, and the forearm. Taylor Jones, seated here, struck through the leg. Christian Angulo, seated here by the door. He shoots him through the wrist, into the chest. He would not survive. Jackson Beaver, Ronaldo Vega, and Nautica Walton were also in that room. They were struck by shrapnel from the bullets ricocheting around the room. When he finishes shooting, the shooter then leaves. He runs down J Hall. He's looking for more victims. Christina Iermy is a teacher in this classroom. She hears the commotion. She steps out, looks down the hall. The shooter is about here. He shoots her through the neck before she can get back in the room. She would not survive. Richard Aspinwall is coming out of this room on I Hall. He hears the commotion. Joining him is David Phoenix coming out of this room. The two of them start coming down the hall here. They don't get very far because the shooter has now reached this point. He turns his gun down this hallway and sends a hail of bullets towards them. As they dive towards their room, David Phoenix is shot in the hip and in the foot. Richard Aspinwall is shot in the side and the upper chest. He would not survive. The shooter continues down the hallway. He gets to here, tries to get in this door, it won't open. He turns back and heads this way. At this point, Mason Schermerhorn is still in that bathroom. He doesn't know what's happening. He comes out of the bathroom, and he turns away from the shooter, doesn't even see him, heading back toward his second period class. The shooter takes aim from behind, shoots at him but misses, hits the wall above and in front of Mason. This startles Mason, and he turns and runs the other way directly at the shooter. He's shot point blank range. He would not survive. Shooter's here. He then aims his gun down K Hall. And Zane Zinni is locked out of his classroom here. He's in the shooter's sights. Now, before the shooting started, 2 school resource officers, Donovan Boyd and Brandon King, were in the vestibule area, an atrium, I think they call it, in this area, right outside the vice principal's office. They're waiting for the vice principal to find this boy and go get him. But they're waiting out there in the atrium, and they hear the gunshots coming from this side. And those 2 deputies ran towards the gunshots. They come down this hallway here, and they turn the corner, and they see the shooter here with his rifle aimed towards Zane Zinni. And they yell for him to drop the gun and get on the ground. And he complies before he gets a shot off at Zane Zinni. The officers rush down here, they secure him, and they secure that 6 Sauer M400 AR-style rifle. And out of his pockets, they find 3 more magazines loaded. Now remember when the shooter had tried to enter his second period class and the teacher pushed that button? Well, that sent an alarm. It immediately notified law enforcement all over the county. Within minutes, an enormous police and medical response descended upon that school. It was a dramatic and intense scene as the school was cleared and the wounded evacuated. But to make matters worse, they were getting additional threats, fake threats, about other shooters at all the other schools in the county. Law enforcement now had to be diverted to these other schools to clear them, to make sure people were safe. Barrow County deputies Anthony Townsend and Brandon Bazinet were sent to clear Winder-Barrow High School here in Winder. Once they cleared it, then they went next door to Russell Middle School. They cleared it. And just as they were finishing that up, they got a call from their superiors. I was trying to say superior and supervisor at the same time. Their superiors to go to a residence in Barrow County and secure it. They were just given an address. They don't know why they're going there. They were just told, go to this residence and secure it until other officers can arrive. Where they're going is the shooter's house. Texted me, she's in middle school. She said we're in lockdown. I'm like, God Almighty, please tell me your brother didn't do something. Agents with the Georgia Bureau of Investigations arrived shortly thereafter, and they began a search of the house. And inside that house, in that 14-year-old boy's bedroom, on the wall, they find this shrine, for a better word. Those pictures are all of the same person, Nicholas Cruz. Nicholas Cruz was the person that in 2018 went into Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, with an AR-style rifle. And there he killed 17 students and faculty and wounded another 17 more. Investigators look at this and they begin to wonder, who is this kid? His name is Colt Gray. He's the oldest son of Colin Gray. His mother is Marcy Gray. He has a younger sister named Jenny, who was 13 years old at the time of this incident. She was actually going to Heyman Morris Middle School, which is directly next door to Apalachee High School. He has a little brother, Coley, who was 8 years old, was going to his elementary school. Now, Colt Gray, raised here in Barrow County, he went to Statham Elementary School up until fourth grade, up till the beginning of fourth grade. And in the beginning of fourth grade, he was withdrawn from Statham Elementary School because the family had moved, and they moved to Gainesville. And he goes to White Sulphur Elementary School, but only for a few months. Because again, the family moved again. Now they moved to Cumming, and he goes to Chattahoochee Elementary School. But again, only for a few months. In March of 2020, they moved to Fitzgerald in Ben Hill County, Georgia. It's South Georgia, kind of east of Tifton. Because there, Marcy's mother and father, Deborah Polhamus and Charlie Polhamus, live, and Deborah Polhamus's mother, Marcy's grandmother, Colt's great-grandmother, had passed away and left the house. So there's an available house for them to live in. So they moved down to Fitzgerald on March 4th of 2020. But if you remember that day, that's the week before COVID shut everything down. That was the end of Colt's 4th grade year. 5th grade. Now this is going to be the fall of 2020 into the spring of 2021. That's 5th grade year. Colt goes to Ben Hill Elementary School. But remember, this is when COVID is raging, and it's mostly virtual. He's mostly at home using the school computers. The next year, 6th grade, fall of 2021, he starts a new school, Ben Hill Middle School, because he's in 6th grade now. And early in that year, 11-year-old Colt, at home, using the school computer, searches the word abuse. A few hours later, he searches the phrase, "how to kill your dad." That was on September 19th, 2021, 3 years before he took that rifle into Apalachee High School. School resource officers are sent to the house to check on him. Everything's fine. It was just a mistake. Misunderstanding. But a defects case is opened on the family. But the family leave Fitzgerald and move to Jackson County 6 weeks later in November of 2021. So in November, they come up here to Jackson County, Georgia. But they don't enroll the kids in school until February of 2022. Colt finishes out his 6th grade year at West Jackson Middle School. 7th grade, fall of 2020. 1 year after he searched How to Kill Your Dad, and 2 years before Apalachee, 12-year-old Colt starts Jefferson Middle School. It's his 7th school in 4 years. That Halloween, halfway through the semester, Marcy, his mother, gets drunk, passes out in the car in the driveway of the house. Jenny and little Coley are trick-or-treating, and they get separated. Coley gets lost. Authorities are called. Another defects case is opened on the family. Marcy and the 2 siblings, little Coley and Jenny, they move back down to Fitzgerald in November of 2022. But Colt stays up in Jackson County with the defendant. Defects caseworker Tamika Mitchum is monitoring Marcy and the 2 siblings down in Fitzgerald, and defects caseworker Michaela Anderson is monitoring Colt and the defendant up here in Jackson County. And starting in March of 2023, during his 7th grade year, Michaela Anderson visits his residence monthly. Every month, she shows up to check on Colt, see how he's doing, check on his well-being. And the defendant always says the same thing. Colt's doing well in school. He doesn't need any counseling. But that's not really true. Colt is full of intense anger, and he's having a hard time dealing with it. On Sunday, May 21st, 2023, this is the end of Colt's 7th grade year at Jefferson Middle School. In fact, classes had ended that Friday, and this is that Sunday. And on that Sunday, the Jackson County Sheriff's Office gets a tip from the FBI. There's an app that you can get on your computer called Discord. And this app popular with video game enthusiasts, but it allows people from all over the world to talk to each other on the computer. And users in a chat room on this app, a true crime chat room, report to the FBI that another user is threatening to shoot up an elementary school. This user is threatening to do this. It says they have access to guns. It says they plan to do it within the next 2 years. The FBI passes this tip on to Jackson County because when you look at the IP address of that user, it comes back to a Colin Gray and an address in Jackson County. Deputy Justin Elliott and investigator Dan Miller go to that address. Now, the current resident of that address has 2 daughters, and they don't use Discord. But they're new to that address, and they keep getting the mail of the previous tenant, Colin Gray. Deputy Elliott and investigator Miller then go to his new address. They speak with the defendant at his house, and they tell him about this threat on Discord. And they ask him, does Colt have access to guns? Which he does. But the defendant says that he and Colt, they take this school shooting stuff very seriously. And Colt denies to these officers that it was him on Discord. He says his Discord account got hacked. The defendant makes no mention to these officers that less than 2 years before, Ben Hill officers had also been to his house when Colt searched how to kill your dad, also on a computer. But before they left, investigator Miller asked the defendant to please restrict Colt's access to guns. Less than 3 weeks later, when DFACS agent Michaela Anderson goes back out to the house like she's been doing monthly to meet with the defendant, and again, she asks, how's Colt doing? He makes no mention to her of this visit from the sheriff's office. 2 weeks after that, on June 23rd, the defendant signs a lease to move out of Jackson County into Winder. But he doesn't tell Michaela Anderson he was planning on doing that, and he never tells DFACS that he did do that. She just keeps going to an empty house. 2 months later, in August, it's time for another school year. Colt's not at Jefferson Middle School anymore. 13-year-old Colt is enrolled at Heyman Morris Middle School. This is the middle school in Winder that's directly next door to Apalachee High School. This is supposed to be his 8th grade year. But he's withdrawn from that school 3 days later. He never attends it. Instead, Colt goes back down to Fitzgerald to live with his mother, Marcy. And while he's in Fitzgerald, Colt is still filled with anger. He's still having trouble dealing with it. He's becoming violent. He breaks windows. He cuts up things with a knife. He even starts cutting on himself with that knife. These are the scars from after he was arrested after the shooting a year later. Colt's grandfather, Charlie Polhamus, is at his wit's end. He actually calls the police on Colt. And at the beginning of October 2023, just a few weeks after being in Fitzgerald, Colt comes back up here to Winder to live with the defendant. But he does not attend school. 2 weeks later, on October 13th, down in Fitzgerald, Marcy, who you remember is still being checked on by DFACS, tests positive for drugs. She's going to lose the kids. DFACS worker Tamika Mitchum, who's been monitoring Marcy, calls the defendant, tells him to come down to Fitzgerald to pick up the other 2 kids, Jenny and Coley, and bring them back up. He now has sole custody of the 3 kids. Marcy's to have no unsupervised contact. But Tamika Mitchum also stresses to the defendant to get the kids in school and counseling as soon as possible. He does neither of these things. 3 weeks after the kids are brought up here, on November 6th, 2023, back down in Fitzgerald, Marcy basically goes crazy. She wants to come up to Winder. She wants her mother, Deborah Polhamus, to bring her to Winder. And Deborah Polhamus says, "You ain't going to Winder." So Marcy duct tapes her mother to the chair, steals her car, drives up to Winder, goes to the defendant's house, keys his truck, and gets arrested. She spends some time in the Barrow County Jail before she's transferred to the Ben Hill County Jail for the charges down there. And while she's down there, she's released on bond to an inpatient drug treatment facility in South Georgia. She has no supervision during this time over Colt. Now back up here in Barrow County, it's been a chaotic few months for Colt. But that Christmas, after the cuttings and the things with the Jackson County and the moms going crazy, testing positive for drugs. Now in February of 2024, 2 months after this Christmas, in February, Colt's siblings, Jenny and Coley, are finally enrolled in school. They've already missed 4 months of school, but they're finally enrolled. Colt does not attend. He misses the entirety of his 8th grade year. But during that spring, when Colt's not in school, the defendant continues to buy accessories for his Christmas present rifle. He buys a sight mark ultra shot sight to go on the rifle. He buys a bungee sling to go for the rifle. He buys an accessory rail set. He buys a 45-degree offset iron sights. And he buys a lot of ammunition. That summer, 2024, Colt is now 14. It's just a few months before he takes his Christmas present rifle into Apalachee High School. July 6th of that summer, Marcy gets out of rehab in Fitzgerald, and the defendant picks her up and brings her back up to Winder. It's her first contact with Colt in 9 months. On July 20th, Colt has a panic attack at the house. He comes in the living room and he actually asks his parents to call 911 for him. But they don't call anyone. Stays in his room. August 14th, 2024, 3 weeks before the shooting. It's Colt's first day of Apalachee. School had started 2 weeks earlier, but this was Colt's first day. He missed the first 2 weeks. He had not been inside of school for 15 months. Not since the sheriff's office came to his door about the threats to shoot up a school. And that morning, Colt again is spiraling out of control. He sends a text message to the defendant at 6:49 a.m. He writes, "I'm sick of your shit. This is the fucking end for you. You fucking caused this." 2 minutes later, at 6:51 a.m., he sends this text message to the defendant. "Whenever something happens, just know the blood is on your hands." His first day of school. And the rifle stays in his room. The very next day, August 26th, 9 days before the shooting, Colt has another panic attack, this time at school. It's the one I referred to earlier in the opening. It's only his 4th day he attended school. Remember, he missed the first 2 weeks of school, and he skipped school 5 of the next 8 days. Colt leaves his second period class that day. He goes to the counselor's office. He's too distressed to go back to class. They call his father, but his father can't come to get Colt. Colt ends up spending the entire school day in the counselor's office. That night, on the phone, Colt asked his grandmother, Deborah Polhamus, if he did something terrible, would she still love him? This bothered her so much, Deborah Polhamus, that the next morning she drives up to Winder from Fitzgerald. And on the way, she calls Advantage Behavioral Health Systems. It's a crisis stabilization inpatient place in Athens, Georgia. She talks to them on the phone, and they tell her he must be brought in by a parent. Marcy's in Fitzgerald. The defendant is here. They tell her that Saturday is a great day to come in because most people don't realize they're actually open on Saturdays and you can just walk right in. But he needs to be brought by a parent. Deborah asked the defendant to take Colt on that Saturday, which would have been August 31st. He doesn't. Wednesday, August the 28th, Colt skips school. This is 2 days after that panic attack, the day after Deborah Polhamus is called Crisis Advantage Behavioral. Colt tells the defendant that he hears voices telling him what to do. This is 3 days before the defendant is supposed to take Colt to Advantage Behavioral, and 1 week before the shooting. At 7:44 a.m. that morning, Colt texts the defendant, I have to kind of dance around the inconvenient truth at times. I have no control over what these things say and tell me to do. And the rifle stays in his room. Colt skips school again the next day, which is a Thursday. That Friday and Monday, school is closed for the Labor Day holiday. And that Tuesday, September 3rd, Colt skips school again. That brings us back around to that Wednesday morning, September 4th, 2024. Those pictures of Nicholas Cruz are still on his wall, and that rifle is still in his room. The defendant leaves to take little Coley to school. Jenny leaves on her bus for Heyman Morris Middle School, which again is directly next door to Apalachee High School. Colt gets his rifle, gets extra magazines, puts them in his book bag. He wraps a poster board around the part of the rifle that sticks out of the bag, and he takes a hat with a Fender guitar logo on it, a stocking hat, and puts it over the top so you can't see it. And then he heads out to meet the bus. A few hours later, just like he'd been warning he was going to do, Colt murders 4 people. Now, after the shooting, which I'll remind you happened at 10:22 a.m. So after that, at 11:01 a.m., Jenny, the daughter, texts her father, 3 people are dead at the high school. The defendant texts back a minute later, how do you know? How do you know? She responds, people are saying, and there was an email. Please, I'm scared. She then texts the defendant, I can't call you, I'm in a lockdown. At 12:19, the defendant texts Jenny, Jenny, have you talked to your brother? Jenny replies, no. But I think we're thinking the same thing, and I don't want to talk about it over text. 1 minute later, the defendant replies, yep, 10-4. I'll be here in just a few. Let me know when you get back in the building and when I can come get you. A few minutes later, the defendant arrives at his home, not Jenny's school, not Apalachee. He goes home, and he runs straight to Colt's room. He has to confirm what he already knows. He goes straight to Colt's room to see if that gun is missing. And it is. Moments later, Anthony Townsend and Brandon Bazinet arrive at his house, and he utters those words, "I knew it." Now, ladies and gentlemen, the charges in this case, it's the same acts that he did. The charges are divided up between whether or not the victim of those acts was a child or an adult. If they're a child, the charges that stem from their victimization would be cruelty to children, because you have to be under 18 for cruelty to children to apply. But through his negligence of allowing Colt to have this gun, knowing what Colt was going to do, he caused cruel and excessive physical pain to the children. That's cruelty to children in the second degree. If that cruelty to children in the second degree results in death, like with Mason Schermerhorn and Christian Angulo, that is murder in the second degree. So the cruelty and the murder in the second go together. They apply to the children. The two adult deceased, Christina Irmy and Richard Aspinwall, they're above the age of 18. The defendant is charged with reckless conduct, same act, recklessly allowing his child, that he knew this was going to happen, to harm someone else. And because they died during the commission of reckless conduct, that is involuntary manslaughter. So for the adults, it's involuntary manslaughter based on reckless conduct. All the other children who were either struck by a bullet or in that Ryan Edwards classroom when the bullet started flying, they're the victims of charges for cruelty to children in the second degree, either by the physical pain it caused or the emotional anguish it caused. And the adults that were injured or put in harm's way, David Phoenix, Stephen Edwards, and Cassandra Ryan, excuse me, those three adults, they're charged, they're the victims of the reckless conduct. Now, at the end of the case, we'll come back before you and ask you to render a verdict of guilty. Thank you.
Before we talk about evidence, before we talk about the law, we have to begin with what every person in this courtroom already knows. What happened at Apalachee High School was tragic. It was horrific, it was terrifying, and it was heartbreaking. Nothing said in this courtroom can change that. Nothing that I'm going to say is meant to diminish that. You're going to hear emotional testimony, you'll see photographs, you'll see videos, you'll hear about the fear, the chaos, and the terror that Colt Gray inflicted on that school and this community. But your job is not to decide whether or not that was tragic. We all know that it was. Your job is to decide something much more specific. Your job is to decide whether or not Colin Gray knew what Colt was going to do. Because the state is not just prosecuting the shooter in this case, they're prosecuting the father as well. I want you to remember something as we begin. The courtroom is not a place where we punish people because we're angry, where we punish people because we're grieving. It's not a place where we punish people because we feel someone has to pay. This is a place where we follow the law. And the law requires proof, and the law requires evidence. And the law requires that the state prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt. That burden never shifts, not for a single moment. A teenager who is struggling mentally, a teenager who is deceptive, a teenager who hid his true intentions from everyone, from his family, from his counselor, from his siblings, from DFACS, from law enforcement, and most especially from his father. The evidence will show a father who did not ignore his child. He did not abandon his child. He did not turn his back on his child. This case is about whether the state can prove criminal liability by showing that Colin Gray knew that Colt was going to do this, knew that Colt was going to harm someone else. You cannot hold someone criminally responsible for failing to predict what was intentionally hidden from them. You'll learn about Colt Gray's state of mind that at the time no one knew. You will learn that months before the shooting, Colt had notes hidden on his cell phone from April of 2024, private notes that appear to be the planning stages of this shooting. Those notes were not known to Colin Gray. Those notes were not shared with Colin Gray. There is no evidence of that. You will learn something else. The plans reflected in those notes show that the shooting was initially planned for February of 2025 to coincide with the anniversary of the Parkland High School shooting committed by Nicholas Cruz. The plan reflected in those notes was that that time was going to be when the shooting happened, not in September of 2024. Something changed. The evidence will suggest and support that Colt accelerated his plan. And there's evidence suggesting that that acceleration was tied to the fact that Colin Gray was actively seeking mental health treatment for his son through the school at that time. There are emails to the counselor. There's paperwork he filled out. There was already in motion, already in place, an appointment for Colt to meet with the counselor and to meet with the mental health specialist the very next day, September 5th. Colin Gray did not know about the plans. Colin Gray did not know that Colt was planning to do this and that he would in fact go harm someone else. Dad. The state will point, and they've already mentioned to you, an incident in May of 2023 when 2 Jackson County sheriffs went to Mr. Gray's home to talk to Colt. Fortunately, this interaction is on body-worn camera video, so you'll get to see the whole episode. He tells the officers that he has a gun in the home. He says that he has a son who is somewhat isolated, who's on the computer a lot. He says that when he was young, he used to enjoy hunting with his father, that they would go deer hunting, and so he was introducing Colt to deer hunting, that they had gone out a year before and Colt had killed his first deer, that the gun that they had was for deer hunting. The gun was to get him outside, which the officer in the video approves of. Get him away from the computers, that's good. But Colin tells the officers, if you think this is him, tell me, because those guns are gone today. And that is not what he's told. It shows that Colin, had he known, would have removed those guns, but he didn't. Let's talk about what Colin actually did, because this case is being framed as if Colin Gray didn't do anything. The evidence will show the opposite. You will hear that when the family transitioned schools, it was Colin Gray who registered Colt. You will hear that Colin Gray worked full-time, was raising 3 kids on his own due to the kids' mother's addiction problems, due to DFAC saying that she was not allowed to have unsupervised contact with him, due to the courts in Barrow County saying she was not even allowed in the same county where these kids lived. Colin was doing everything. Colin is the one that filled out the counseling referral forms. Colin is the one that communicated with the school counselor. Colin's the one who discussed the evaluation. Colin was the one who was coordinating mental health services through the school. Colin is the one that filled out the paperwork to get the assessment done on September the 5th. You'll hear that the school had arranged, and it had already been taken care of, that Colin had completed everything he needed to for the assessment. You're going to hear from the grandmother who says that they wanted to take him to Advantage Behavioral in Athens, that it was urgent. This comes out after the shooting. The grandmother will also tell you she had absolutely no idea that Colt had any interest in Nicholas Cruz or school shootings in general until after the shooting happened and they were making the 4.5-hour trip from Fitzgerald, her and her daughter Marcy, at which point Marcy said, well, Colt does like this school shooter named Nicholas Cruz. That's the first time that you hear Debbie learns any of that. You're going to see text messages from Debbie in August and September of 2024 when she says that they were so strongly trying to get him into a facility. What you're not going to see in those text messages is any urgency on Debbie's part. You're not going to see anything from Debbie saying, get the guns out of the house. You're not going to see anything from Debbie saying, I'm worried about Colt. We need to get him there today. Nothing. They don't talk about it at all. Debbie doesn't mention it one bit. Now, she mentions it in hindsight after the fact, and Marcy does the same thing. Who is Colin Gray? He's a working father raising 3 kids by himself. He had responsibilities, he had a job, he had a family to keep afloat. He had 2 other kids besides Colt. He was involved. You'll see his text messages to his children. You'll see his text messages to Colt. This is not a parent who's turning his back on what's going on right in front of him. Let's talk about what you're not going to hear. Because sometimes what you don't hear in a case like this is just important as what you do. Sometimes the absence of evidence tells you more than the evidence itself. You will not hear a text message where Colt says to his dad, I'm going to shoot a school. I'm bringing a gun tomorrow. I have a plan. I'm going to hurt someone. You won't see a single message like that. You will not hear that Colt ever told his father about the notes on his iPhone. You will not hear that Colt ever showed his father a plan. You will not hear that Colt told his father he was accelerating the plan. You will not hear that anyone called Colin Gray and said, your son is about to commit a shooting. You will not hear that law enforcement told him, your son made a credible threat. You will not hear a school official warn him his mental health treatment is imminent. He needs to see someone today. You will not hear anyone from DFACS told him, we have serious concerns that he's violent, that he's going to hurt someone else. You will not hear anyone say that they contacted the police on September 3rd and said there's a school shooting about to happen. You will not hear that Colin Gray encouraged violence. You will not hear that he glorified violence. You will not hear that he dismissed a specific credible threat. In fact, you'll hear something entirely different. You'll hear that Colt suffered from anxiety. You'll hear that Colt suffered from depression. You'll hear about his panic attacks. You'll hear that he didn't like going to school. These are serious issues, but these are not the same as homicidal ideations. These are not the same as suicidal ideations. These are not the same thing as proof of a probable school shooting. The state will ask you to connect dots after the fact using hindsight. Dots that became visible only after the shooting itself. But what you will not hear is evidence that at the time, Colin had sufficient warning that this outcome was probable. Not imaginable, not possible, but probable. That Colin knew that his son would harm someone else. You'll hear testimony from Colt Gray's counselor. And that's important because it gives you a professional's perspective on what was going on with Colt in the weeks leading up to the shooting. You will hear that Colt presented as a student suffering from anxiety and emotional instability, panic symptoms, an inability to function in class. And you'll hear something very important. You will hear that even the school counselor, a professional trained, did not perceive Colt as a threat. She described him as nice, respectful. That matters, because if a trained counselor did not perceive the imminent violence then it's unreasonable to claim that the father should have seen it himself. You'll also hear testimony from her about how the father did in fact take steps to get him mental health treatment. The father was in communication with the counselor. The father submitted the paperwork. The father completed the referral, and the father was pursuing intervention. You'll hear the therapist was essentially scheduled to meet with Colt the very next day. The father was not ignoring the problem. Colin Gray was acting. They want you to hold him responsible because they don't think he was acting fast enough. You'll hear from his daughter, Colt's sister, Jenny Gray. Her testimony will corroborate the concealment that Colt was perpetrating on his family, on his dad. She'll testify that Colt was secretive, that he was constantly deleting and opening new accounts on Discord to avoid detection, that he was using usernames that were combinations of alphanumeric combinations. You'll find that he would not discuss, based on the statement that Jenny gave on September 4th of 2024, that he would not discuss school shootings or school shooters in front of his father. You will hear on the morning of the shooting, Colin Gray had already left home. You will hear that Colt, when he did discuss school shooters with Jenny, made her promise not to tell his dad. You'll hear that that morning on September the 4th, Colin Gray got up and took his youngest son, Coley Jr., to school, that he left before Jenny and Colt did to catch the bus. You will hear that Colt had to go and find the gun because it wasn't in his room, that he had to find the ammunition that wasn't in his room, and that he had to put them in his backpack, and that he had to conceal the rifle that stuck out of his backpack 18 to 24 inches with a poster board. And he put a hat on top of it. It proves concealment, it proves independent action, and that matters because it's consistent with what Colt had done the whole time, which was conceal this plan from his father. Remember, the state says that he knew. They said that he knew this was going to happen. That he knew, not that it was possible, that he knew Colt was going to go and harm someone else. But you can't consciously disregard a risk that you're not aware of. And you can't say something is probable when it's being hidden from you. You're going to see text message. They've already discussed some of the messages. We're going to discuss some of the other ones. And we're going to talk about why they matter. There are hundreds of text messages between Colin Gray and his son. These texts matter because they show the reality in real time of what was happening and what Colin would have thought and what Colin would have known at that time. Not now, but at that time. They also show what Colt chose not to disclose. You'll see a father checking on his son on a daily basis, checking on school attendance. Did you make it to school? How's your day going? How was your day? What are you doing after class? You'll see encouragement. I'm proud of you. I love you. You're a good young man. This is not an absent father. This is not a father not paying attention to his child. You'll see daily involvement. You'll see a father trying to keep a teenager engaged and connected to school. You'll see a father trying to build the confidence and self-esteem of his son. You will see this all in the text messages. You'll see their discussions about mental health, about depression, which is not homicidal ideation, about anxiety, which is not homicidal ideation, about anxiety, panic attacks, which are not homicidal ideation. You'll see a father trying to stabilize a situation at home. You will not see threats to harm other folks. You will not see threats to harm other people. You will not see, I'm going to shoot up the school, I'm bringing a gun, I have a plan, I'm going to harm someone. There needs to be proof that Colin Gray knew what Colt was going to do and knew that Colt was going to harm someone. The text messages show something else as well. They show that Colt was capable of living a double life. He could text his father, "Love you," and "have a good day," while simultaneously writing plans on his phone about shooting up the school. He could talk about liking school. School was good. The kids here are mature, referring to the Apalachee High School. They gave me a nickname. The teacher said I'm the tech guy. And you'll hear Colin respond happily that his son seems to be finding his way for the first time in a while in school. He could talk, Colt, about school being good, about having a good day, and what they're going to have for dinner, while also planning on how to sneak a rifle into the school. That's not something a father can foresee. He asked about ammunition. You'll hear evidence that they went to the gun range. You'll hear evidence that he taught his son safety. You will not hear evidence that Colt requested ammunition because he was getting ready to do a school shooting. That conversation is not a threat. There's no mention of harming anyone else. There's no talk of a timeline. The state's going to ask you to interpret these ordinary messages with extraordinary hindsight. But the law does not allow hindsight convictions. You're tasked with determining what Colin Gray knew in the months leading up to the shooting. It requires proof of what he specifically knew at that time. You'll hear from the mother, Marcy Gray. She'll try to convince you that she warned everyone and no one listened. The evidence will show that she did not share the most important information she knew about Colt with Colin. You've already heard their relationship was not smooth. You heard that DFACS took the kids from her. You'll hear that they were separated. You'll hear that the kids had to come up here per the DFACS order. You'll hear that she drove up here. After telling her mother she was going to murder Colin, came up here, keyed his cars, got arrested, and then was told by the judge, you can't come back to Barrow County. You'll see evidence in text messages between Colt and his mom. You will see in these text messages Colt telling his mom prior to the shooting that he had created a Securus online profile that he was using by making up a fake age to try and get in contact with Nicholas Cruz in prison down in Florida. He will text her that he had emailed Nicholas Cruz a couple times, and he'd even put money on his commissary. Marcy's response is to ask him where he got the money. And he tells Marcy in a text message, I told Dad it was to buy a video game on Steam. To which Marcy responds with a laughing out loud emoji. Marcy knew. She does not reply immediately after to Colin or tell him, hey, this is what's going on. We got to get the guns out of the house now. No, she responds with a laughing out loud emoji. That's how serious she took it. She didn't think anything was going to happen. You will see that the state is asking you to convict Colin largely based on a hindsight narrative provided by witnesses who are not credible, that did not recognize the warning signs in real time. You will hear from the victims in this case. Their testimony will be emotional. And it's important to understand what happened inside that school. But respectfully, their testimony will not establish what Colin Gray knew and didn't know. They can't tell you what was said in the home. They can't tell you what was concealed. They can't tell you what was sent in text messages. And they can't tell you what warnings were communicated to Colin Gray. We're not going to dispute the horror of what happened. We're not going to dispute that they were harmed, that they were physically harmed and mentally harmed. But that's not proof that he was negligent. That is not proof that he knew what was in Colt's heart, that he knew what Colt was planning, and that he knew that Colt was going to harm someone else. The law doesn't punish what is possible. The law does not punish what is conceivable. He is charged with knowing what would happen. He is charged with knowing his son would harm someone else. In life, almost anything is possible. It's possible that a teenager who's angry might get into a fight. It's possible that a teenager who's depressed might run away or make up excuses not to go to school. It's possible that a teenager who's anxious might break something or act out. But this is not a case about whether something bad is possible. This is a case about whether or not Colin Gray knew Colt was going to take a gun to that school and harm other people. That matters, because if the standard becomes it could have happened, then the law becomes limitless. If the standard becomes you should have imagined the worst, then every parent becomes criminally liable for what a teenager might do. But that's not the standard. The standard is proof. Proof that Colin Gray knew, that he consciously disregarded. Not a vague fear, not a general worry, but a risk that made this tragedy. That he knew Colt was going to go to that school. That he knew what the counselor didn't, what the DFACS professionals who had met with Colt didn't. The state will ask you to look at the outcome and then work backward to say because this happened, it must have been foreseeable. But the law doesn't allow hindsight to substitute for evidence. That's why you're going to hear about what was actually known at that time, and most importantly, what was actually hidden from Colin Gray at that time. Because when someone conceals a plan, deceives the people around them, acts independently, the law does not allow us to pretend that the people left behind should have seen through all of it. They're going to say that common sense means you should have seen this coming. And guns are serious, and this tragedy is serious. But the law is serious too. This case is not about whether or not firearms are dangerous in the abstract. It's about whether Colin Gray, based upon what he actually knew, failed to act because he knew that his son was going to go to that school and commit these acts. In a case like this, there's a natural human instinct. When something this awful happens, we want an explanation. We want someone to blame. We want a story that makes sense so that we can take steps to make sure something like this never happens again. It's very easy and it's very human to look at the end result and believe that someone somewhere must have known. But the evidence in this case is going to show something that's deeply uncomfortable. Sometimes the truth is that the person who committed the act was hiding it. Sometimes the truth is that a family can be struggling, a child can be spiraling, and people can try to get that child mental health help. And still, something unthinkable can happen. It's not satisfying and it doesn't give anyone peace. But the criminal courtroom is not here to provide a scapegoat. It's here to provide justice. Being a juror, providing justice, that requires discipline. It requires that we do not convict someone because we're horrified. It requires that we do not convict someone because we wish they would have seen it coming. It requires that we do not convict someone because we feel like there must be some accountability somewhere. The state has chosen to put the father on trial for what the son did. And at the end of this case, you'll be asked to decide whether the state has proven, beyond a reasonable doubt, that Colin Gray knew his son would go to that school and commit these violent acts. And at the end of this trial, you will find the state cannot prove that beyond a reasonable doubt, and we will ask you to return the only verdict that the evidence can support, which is not guilty on all counts for Colin Gray. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, before the first witness is called, I'm going to go ahead and take a 10 to 15 minute restroom break. Just recall the prior instructions.
All right. I want to skip ahead. To Suzanne Harris. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here now to Suzanne Harris and then play it from there. All right, so this is Suzanne Harris. She's the computer science teacher. And then after that is Kathleen Greer. So these next two, I want to play these next two. So we're hour and 21 minutes, hour and 21 minutes into deliberating. So hour, 21 minutes and counting.
Everyone can be seated. All right, state calls next witness.
State called Suzanne Harris. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Okay, you can have a seat. Will you go ahead and introduce yourself to the jury?
My name is Suzanne Harris. I was a teacher at Apalachee High School. I've been in the county for 14 years. This is my 18th year teaching.
Okay. Well, you went ahead and answered my next question, which was, what do you do? So you indicated that you worked at Apalachee High School. When did you work at Apalachee High School? What years of service did you do there?
I worked there until December of this past year. So I've been there for 4.5 years.
And while you were at Apalachee High School, what subject did you teach?
Computer science.
In September of 2024, were you teaching computer science at that time?
I was.
And I'm going to ask you if you could show me on that map right next to you which was your classroom. Keyboard that. Yeah.
Okay. I'm right here on G Hall, and my classroom is right here, 1.515.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. You can have a seat. I am going to draw your attention to September 4th of 2024. Were you working at Apalachee that day?
I was.
And was Colt Gray in one of your classes?
He was.
What period was he in?
He was in first period.
And what time is that class? or generally, what time does first period start?
Start the bell rang at like 8:15.
Okay. And what time does it end?
Best I recall, like 9:38, somewhere around there.
And on September 4th, I guess, had you seen him in your class before?
I think he'd been in class one time prior to that day.
And on September 4th, did he talk to you?
He did.
When did he first talk to you?
Early on in the classroom session, I think around 8:30, he asked to go to the restroom.
And then after that, did he come and talk to you again?
He did.
And what did he talk to you about?
At this point, we had been talking about missing assignments and different things because he'd only been there for 2 days, but he asked whether or not we'd ever had an active shooter drill before.
And what did you tell him?
I told him that we had had one.
Judge, we're going to object any hearsay. Mr. Brooks, response.
Your Honor, doesn't go to the truth of the matter asserted. It goes to sort of present sense impression, what they're discussing at that time, and then what action she took afterwards.
Yeah, I would think this falls into a category of non-hearsay. They're not offering it to prove that they did or didn't have active school shooter trainings in the past. It's just, did he ask the question? So I'm going to overrule the objection.
Thank you, Your Honor. And so, kind of getting back to the question, he asked you if there was an active shooter drill, and then your response was what?
Yeah, we actually had one last week, but he wasn't there for the drill.
Okay. And was there any further discussion about that?
At that moment, I did ask him what school he went to because I was concerned, like, why would you, had you worked in, or been in a school that it would have made you nervous about school shooting? And he told me that that he had been at Jefferson High School, middle school, excuse me, in the 8th grade. And I asked him if he knew Elaine Murphy, who's one of the teachers at Jefferson.
Judge, I'm going to again object any hearsay.
And
Ms. Brooks, you have a response? Or?
I think we'll just move on from what she said back to him and go on to the next topic.
All right, so I'll sustain the objections to his last remarks. Go ahead.
Okay. So after y'all had the discussion, did he go back and sit down?
He did.
Okay. And this time, I'm going to publish a clip from State's Exhibit 16. It's been previously introduced in the evidence, and the clip is from 38 minutes and 23 seconds to 39 minutes and 12 seconds. I'm going to pause it briefly. Can you kind of tell the jury, just so they can make sure they see where you are and then also where Colt Gray is?
Sure. So over to this side over here, where you see the gold and white striped bulletin board, that's where my desk is. And
is that all the way on the left of the screen?
Yes. And then he is to the right of my desk. I don't know what corner I can show you. So I'm here, and Colt is here, and this is where he was sitting.
Okay.
And this was Alex Johnson, and this was Tyler Graham.
It may facilitate things for these fisheye views to kind of refer to like the face of a clock, 9 o'clock, or.
That is a good idea, Your Honor. And as far as the exit or the entrance to the classroom, the door, is that around 11 o'clock?
It is.
All right, thank you. All right, we can finish playing the clip. And does that clip show where he asked you about the active shooter drill?
Yes.
Okay. When he asked you that, did that concern you?
I mean, you don't expect to hear that in the classroom. I mean, we hear about school shootings, but you don't think it's going to happen to you. So it was a little bit alarming. And I did send an email to the counselor in regards to that, in regards to my concern.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as State Exhibit 32. Do you recognize that?
I do.
And what do you recognize that as?
It's the email that I sent to Miss Butler.
Okay. And is it a fair and accurate copy of that email that you sent to Miss Butler on September 4th?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, this time I'd like to introduce into evidence State Exhibit 32.
No objection.
All right, 32 is admitted.
Okay, if we could display that for the jury. Okay, so you indicated that you sent this email to Miss Butler. Can you tell us who Miss Butler is?
She's the counselor that is in charge of his last name. So each counselor has a certain number of letters in the alphabet that they're in charge of, and she was in charge of his last name.
And then you also copied D. Martin. Can you tell me who D. Martin is?
She's our assistant principal, but I'm a CTAE teacher, so she was actually over the CTAE umbrella.
Okay. And what time did you send that email?
The timestamp is 8:46 a.m.
And can you read for the jury what your email said?
The subject said, inquiry from CG that might warrant a few questions. Miss Butler, I had a student who is new to the school. He has missed quite a bit already. He asked this morning if we ever do any active shooter drills. I thought this was an odd question. I told him we did, and we had one recently, but he was absent. I asked if he had a particular concern, and he said he didn't. The student is Colt Gray, and he is in the 9th grade, just FYI.
Thank you. Now, after you sent that email, did Colt come and talk to you again?
Yes.
Okay, and what did he talk to you about this time?
Several times he was asking about missing assignments. The two students that were sitting beside him, Alex Johnson and Tyler Graham, they were actually helping him with assignments. But at some point closer to the time that the bell rang, he asked what our policy was in between restroom transitions as far as going to the restroom.
And what is Apalachee's policy about restroom transitions?
You cannot go to the restroom during transitions.
Okay. And by transition, do you mean between classes?
Yes, ma'am.
So when can you go to the restroom?
You can go in class.
And how do y'all prevent people from going to the restroom during between classes?
We have chains, and so I actually had the restroom duty right outside my classroom. So there's chains, and you just walk out and clip the chain and stand there and make sure that the students don't go in and out of the restroom.
Okay. So at this time, I'm going to show another clip from State's Exhibit 16, which is from 1 hour and 30 minutes and 54 seconds to 1 hour and 31 minutes and 18 seconds. Is that when he asked you about going to the bathroom or what the bathroom policy is?
He did, and I reached over to grab the bathroom pass. That's what the thing I was reaching for. They have to have a hall pass in order to go to the restroom. I asked him if he needed to go to the restroom, and he said he did not.
When class was over and he was getting ready to leave, did you notice anything about him or his belongings that caused you concern?
Very close to the end of class, I noticed that there was like a poster or some kind of project or something that was sticking out of his book bag. And I asked him what his project was about, and he didn't really have much to say about the project, but he did tell me that he would show it to me later if I wanted to see it. And I couldn't tell what the project was, but he had only been there for a couple of days, so I was looking at it kind of odd. It was taller than the book bag, and it had like clothing that was kind of wrapped around it. And we're in September, but there was like a sock cap that appeared to be like stuck on the top, and I thought it was kind of odd.
How did he carry the bag when he left your classroom?
It was very difficult for him to carry. It was like really super heavy. And so when he went to pick it up, you could tell, and I said, "Do you need help with that?" And he seemed a little agitated or a little nervous. And so he just like scurried out of the classroom with his book bag.
Now, as a teacher, as an educator, do you have the authority to search a child's backpack or a student's backpack?
No, I do not.
Okay. And so based on what you observed with his backpack and with the questions that he asked you about the active shooter and about the bathroom, what did you do?
Initially, I went straight out the door and went to the restrooms to put up the chain because the class was in transition and that's where my restroom duty is. But as I was standing there, I wasn't standing there very long, but I heard a voice that said, "He's got a gun."
And that's just like a voice in your head?
Voice in my head, yeah.
And what did you do when you kind of felt that happen?
I got cold chills from the top of my hair all the way down to the toes of my feet. And I stood there for a minute, and it quickly runs through your mind, like if you make an accusation and you tell somebody's got a gun, they're going to think you're crazy. But as I stood there for just a second, it just got louder. And so I just darted down the hallway and went straight to D. Martin's office.
Okay. And what did you do when you got to D. Martin's office?
I was going to attempt to tell her that I thought that he had a gun, but she was in there with another student. And so the door was closed. So I immediately came out. Mr. Broughton, who was our other AP, he was standing out in the atrium because we're in class transition. And I went up told him that, I really needed to talk to somebody. And he said, "Well, have you already been talking to Dee about this?" And I said, "Yes." And about that time, somebody came on the radio and said that she was releasing that student to the media center. And he said, "Oh, well, she's done. So you go ahead and you go ahead and go in there and talk with her." And so that's what I did.
And what was that discussion, or what did you tell her?
When I went in, there was another teacher that was coming in behind me. It was Mandy Pugh and two of her students. And Dee was coming out of her office, and she thought we were together regarding another situation. And I told her no, and there was somebody in the office that was next door to hers. And so there was still a student that was in her office, and so we went into Mr. Neely's office, which is the third office. And we went straight back and we're trying to find some place private. But I told her, I said, "I don't know how I know, but, I think he's got a gun."
After that, what did you do?
She asked me at that point if I knew what class he was in, and I said, "No, I don't." But when I went back to my classroom, then I looked up who the classroom teacher was, and it was Catherine Greer.
Okay. And I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 33. Do you recognize that?
I do.
And what do you recognize that as?
It's the email that I sent letting Dee know what classroom he was in.
And is that a fair and accurate copy of that email?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time I would like to introduce into evidence State's Exhibit 33.
No objection. All right, 33 submitted.
And we'll go ahead and publish that to the jury. Okay. And again, you indicated that this was to D. Martin. Can you tell us the time that you sent that email?
The time is at 9:52 a.m.
And can you tell us what the email said?
Colt Gray is with Miss Greer during second period, FYI, thanks.
Your second period class, was it a planning period for you, or were you teaching a class?
It was planning period.
Okay. After that email, can you tell us what happened?
So I have other students that share the classroom. They come in, we share the classroom together. And Alex English was just another teacher. It's his first year teaching. He was teaching audio, video technology, and film. And he came in with his students. And so at some point during the class, I was just really nervous, and I just stood up and kind of addressed the whole class without asking him first. I just was very stern, and what I said was, don't ask me how I know, don't ask me any questions, but do not leave this classroom unless it's an absolute emergency. Because I just felt in every fiber of my being that something was wrong.
At some point, did you become aware that there was shooting going on in the high school?
Yes. At one point, Alex kind of came towards the door, and we kind of stepped out in the hallway, and I told him what I was suspicious of, and he was like, "Oh gosh, that sounds, scary or whatever." And I said, "I don't know how I know, but I just felt like that something was going to happen." And so I came back in the classroom, and shortly thereafter, we saw the lockdown screen, and we went into lockdown.
And eventually, were you able to hear the shooting, or did you just become aware that something had happened?
No, I actually heard the shooting. It's our protocol to go out, like to open up the classroom door to kind of look to see who's in the hallway, if there's any kids in the bathroom. And I did that, and I could hear gunshots to the left, which is down towards the counseling office.
After the shooting had ended, were y'all eventually able to leave your classroom?
Yes.
Okay. And where were y'all evacuated to?
To the football field.
And I'm going to play one more clip for you, which is the clip for when Colt was leaving your classroom. And it is from 1 hour and 39 minutes and 11 seconds to 1 hour and 40 minutes and 14 seconds. And that's, again, from State's Exhibit 16. And just to be clear, did you ever actually see a gun?
No.
Okay. And so you had a feeling that there was a gun, but you never saw one?
No.
Okay. Nothing further.
Yes, Sean. Good afternoon, Ms. Harris. I have a few questions. If I ask a question that doesn't make sense or you'd like me to clarify, please let me know, and I'll go ahead and take care of that. All right. So you were in class and you observed this backpack that Mr. Gray had, correct?
Yes.
And I believe you said it looked like it was heavy?
When he got ready to leave the classroom is where it appeared to be heavy.
Based on how he was lifting it, is that what you're referring to?
Exactly, yes.
Okay. And at some point after the shooting, you gave a statement to a couple officers from GBI, is that correct? Mm-hmm. And you have to say yes or no for the court reporter.
Oh.
Sorry. No, you're fine. Do you remember telling them that you were familiar with guns?
Yes.
And I believe you said that you thought, based on the length of the object that was extending from his backpack, that kind of made you suspicious. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
How was it about the poster board? How far was it extending out of the backpack?
It appeared to be about that far.
So you're holding your hands, and so I have to make a record for the court reporter, like a foot and a half more?
2.5 foot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And you said there was a hat stuffed down the tube of the poster board. Is that correct?
It appeared to be clothing, and best I recall, it looked like a sock cap.
Like a toboggan?
Yes.
So like a winter hat?
Yeah.
And of course, this was September.
Right. And I thought that was odd.
Right. And it wasn't cold that day?
No, it was not.
Okay. All right. Okay, I think that's it. Let me check one other thing. And you said, we saw from where he was sitting in class on the video, he was sitting next to a couple other students. And without telling me what anybody said specifically, your memory is that they were engaging in conversations regarding missing assignments?
Yes.
Okay. Can I have 1 second, Judge? 1 second.
Ms. Harris, that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Just on crossing,
No, Your Honor. May Ms. Harris be excused?
Yes, David Carlson, that's what they call Captain Gray. So I'll be in the habit of just excusing witnesses when they ask if there's someone that you don't want to be excused.
Everybody remember, no outbursts, don't get out there, okay? No outbursts, get out. Judge will make the thing now.
Possible verdict, guys. Possible verdict. Possible verdict. All right, possible verdict. We're hearing there's a possible verdict. Possible verdict.
Remain seated. Court will come to order.
So my understanding is the jury has a verdict.
Yep, verdict. Yep.
I realize that there are divergent interests in the courtroom. All right, sorry, just saw it. Mr. Smith.
Not sure yet.
So everybody else is present. All right, so my understanding is the jury has a verdict. I know that there are divergent interests in the courtroom. If you want to remain in the courtroom, you have to control the emotional outbursts that you may have. council, what I will do is confirm that they have a verdict, and then I will have the foreperson deliver it. It will be brought over to me. I will ask council to approach, to inspect the verdict. I will ask you if there are any objections to the form or legality of the verdict. Does anybody have questions?
There.
All right. Brooks, you can bring the jury in.
Yep, we have a verdict. We have a verdict here, you guys. After an hour and 47 minutes, we have a verdict.
All right, now we see. Madam Foreperson, my understanding is the jury has reached a verdict. Is that true?
Yes,
So was the verdict unanimous?
yes,
And have you signed, dated it, and filled in your verdict where applicable?
yes.
All right, you go hand it to the bailiff. Thanks, sir. And counsel, if y'all want to approach to inspect the verdict. Since y'all are up here in the hand here. Look at those lesser terms. Any objections to the form or legality of the verdict?
Not from the state, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Jones, if you will publish the verdict.
In the Superior Court of Barrow County, State of Georgia versus Colin Gray, case number 24-CR-593-P, jury verdict. Count 1, murder in the second degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 2, cruelty to children in the second degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 3, murder in the second degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 4, cruelty to children in the second degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 5, involuntary manslaughter, unfaithful act. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 6, reckless conduct. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 7, involuntary manslaughter, unlawful act. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 8, reckless conduct. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 10, cruelty to children in the second degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 11, cruelty to children in the second degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 12, cruelty to children in the second degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 13, cruelty to children in the second degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 14, cruelty to children in the second degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 15, cruelty to children in the second degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 16, cruelty to children in the second degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 17, cruelty to children in the second degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 18, cruelty to children in the second degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 19, cruelty to children in the second degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 20, cruelty to children in the second degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 22, cruelty to children in the second degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 23, cruelty to children in the second degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 24, cruelty to children in the second degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 25, cruelty to children in the second degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 26, cruelty to children in the second degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 27, reckless conduct. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 28, reckless conduct. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 29, reckless conduct. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. This third day of March 2026, signed foreperson.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Counsel, do we need the services of the jury or any inquiry with the jury?
Yes, Judge, we'd ask the court to poll the jury.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, the defense has asked that I poll the jury. What I am going to do is call out a juror number. I'll ask you to stand. I'm going to ask, was it your verdict in the jury room? Was it freely and voluntarily entered by you or made by you? And is it still your verdict? Juror number 2, stand. All right. Ma'am, was this your verdict in the jury room?
Yes.
Was it freely and voluntarily made by you?
Yes.
Is it still your verdict?
Yes.
Thank you. Juror 49. Ma'am, was this your verdict in the jury room?
Yes.
Was it freely and voluntarily made by you?
Yes.
Is it still your verdict?
Yes.
Thank you. Juror 51. Sir, was this your verdict in the jury room?
Yes.
Was it freely and voluntarily made by you?
Yes.
Is it still your verdict?
Yes.
Thank you. Juror 52. Ma'am, was this your verdict in the jury room?
Yes.
Was it freely and voluntarily made by you?
Yes.
Is it still your verdict?
Yes.
Thank you. Juror 63. 63. Yep. Sir, was this your verdict in the jury room?
It was.
Was it freely and voluntarily made by you?
Yes.
Is it still your verdict?
Yes.
Thank you. Juror 71. Ma'am, was this your verdict in the jury room?
Yes.
Was it freely and voluntarily made by you?
Yes.
Is it still your verdict?
Yes.
Thank you. Juror 77. Sir, was this your verdict in the jury room?
Yes.
Was it freely and voluntarily made by you?
Yes.
Is it still your verdict?
Yes.
Thank you. Juror 82. Sir, was this your verdict in the jury room?
Yes.
Was it freely and voluntarily made by you?
Yes.
Is it still your verdict?
Yes.
Thank you. Juror 97. And was this your verdict in the jury room?
Yes.
Was it freely and voluntarily made by you?
Yes.
Is it still your verdict?
Yes.
Thank you. Juror 99. Sir, was this your verdict in the jury room?
Yes.
Was it freely and voluntarily made by you?
Yes.
Is it still your verdict?
Yes.
Thank you. Juror 102. Sir, was this your verdict in the jury room?
Yes.
Was it freely and voluntarily made by you?
Yes.
Is it still your verdict?
Yes.
Thank you. Juror 103. Ma'am, was this your verdict in the jury room?
Yes.
Was it freely and voluntarily made by you?
Yes.
Is it still your verdict?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Any reason why the jury should not be released?
Not going to state, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, if y'all will, go ahead and just go back to the jury room. I'll come back and address you shortly.
sir.
You can put the alternates back in with the
Yes, sir.
regular jurors. All right, y'all can remand Mr. Gray in custody. Obviously, we're not doing the sentencing today. Sentencing will be deferred. Don't take me yet. I'm sorry. I thought maybe you had custody. All right, so sentencing will be deferred. I probably meet with counsel in chambers if you want to discuss scheduling for sentencing, if that works. And we'll go from there. And Danielle, if we get the sheriff's office in order. Anything else we need to address today?
Before you talk to the jury, do you mind if me and defense counsel approach this quickly?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, guilty on all counts, counts 1 through 29. And Cuda Girl, don't worry about it. You did fantastic. The times that you were there, we appreciate you being there and calling in. So don't give it a second thought. You did a great job. So they got that white noise up. So they're guilty on all charges. Sentencing is going to be deferred. We'll stick around a little bit to see if we can get a press conference. I'm actually, quite honestly, I'm shocked that they came back this quickly. I thought they would take at least today. At least today. Elizabeth, I heard that they're going to defer it and they're going to meet in chambers, but we'll find out. We'll find out, and we'll stream the sentencing. Don't worry, we will stream the sentencing. Yeah, we can end our poll now. End our poll. All right, thank you guys for voting. Appreciate that. One to 3 hours. Whoever got 1 to 3 hours, you guys got it right. 35% of you said 1 to 3 hours. So you guys got it right. Yeah, I did too, Brett. I thought I didn't think they'd honestly didn't think they'd get a verdict today, but juries are always unpredictable. Just when you think you can predict them, I never want to predict a jury. So we'll stick around for a press conference, as we like to do. because I'm sure there will be one, at least on one side or the other. We'll see if we can find one. And then now after this, we can put our full attention on Corey. We'll go over to Corey Richens and we'll put our full attention on her.
We're going to discuss the scheduling of sentencing, which obviously there are a lot of people that need to be notified, have a right to appear at sentencing. So sentencing will be deferred to another day. I will talk to counsel in chambers to discuss the timeline for that. Otherwise, we are adjourned.
All right. So let's see if we can get a. I'll try and find a press conference. See if we can find a presser. May take a little bit for a press conference to come up, but again, guilty on all charges. He's going away for a long, long time. I think he's up for like 180 years or something like that, but yep, he's going away for a long, long time. All right. Just trying to find us a press conference. And if we can't find one now, oh, here, let's go here. All right.
Saying that all of these red flags were ignored, and still he gifted his son an AR-15 rather style rifle that was allegedly used in that mass shooting. So again, a very short time to reach a verdict, less than 2 hours, finding Colin Gray guilty on all 29 charges. In this case, really setting a precedent for parents here in Georgia that they may be held responsible, criminally responsible, for the actions of their children. Brooks.
All right, Diamante, thank you for that. And let's take you back just 2 weeks when this trial first began. There was a lot of emotional testimony, obviously a lot of graphic photos, some of that surveillance video that was shared there in the courtroom. And many would say it was chilling to hear some of those things that came out of that testimony. So we can tell you that prosecutors believe that Colin Gray knowingly allowed his son access to that gun that investigators say was used the day of that shooting in 2024. And as we first heard testimony from Colin Gray when he was there on the stand, he, said there were a lot of things that were happening in his life. There were a lot of things that were happening there in that home, and that this was a way for him to essentially bond with his child regarding guns. So this does set a precedent for sure regarding what could happen in the future for parents who are charged in the crimes of their children and what their children may be accused of. Regarding the charges and with Colin Gray now being found guilty on all of those counts, he does face 180 years in prison. So again, we're still working to figure out when an actual sentencing date may come, but he does face 180 years in prison for those 29 felony charges that he was found guilty of. Another thing that we want to show you, just if we can go back to some of that true video, and we can take that video full so I can get off the camera for just a second, just to show you a little bit about what we have in the courtroom and some of that testimony that was there in the courtroom. Again, as Colin Gray, the father of the accused Apalachee High School shooter, as he was there in the courtroom, he took the stand. He was essentially grilled by prosecutors and then also, you know, the defense attorneys resting their case not long after Colin Gray was there on the stand. But again, the idea here was, and the idea here in this situation was just so that Colin Gray could kind of paint the picture of why some of those signs might have been missed or why he didn't really consider them as signs. So we want to check in with Atlanta News First, Chelsea Beimfor, who joins us now. Chelsea, you were inside the courtroom. You're now just outside of the courtroom. What was the emotion as that verdict was being read?
Well, Brooks, it was very silent. Then you could, of course, hear people crying. We heard from the judge right before the verdict was read, asking people to limit their emotions. Of course, there were family and friends of Colin Gray in there, and then family and friends of all of the victims in this shooting. So as that verdict began being read, you could hear some people behind us in the gallery becoming very emotional, quietly crying. We could see Mason Schermerhorn's parents holding hands and crying. Christian Angelo's father was seated behind me, softly crying as well. It was a very tense and emotional few moments. And then Colin Gray was placed into handcuffs. I was sitting right behind him and was taken away by bailiffs into custody.
You're saying that it was silent there. I was looking at Colin Gray's face, and I didn't really get a sense of anything. Was that how it seemed on the inside of the courtroom as well?
Yeah, I was seated right behind him, but I could see his profile, and he really didn't have much of a reaction to these charges. The only time we saw him really get emotional during this 12-day trial was when prosecutors played the video of that school shooting where his son, Colt Gray, allegedly carried out that attack. Later, when Colin took the stand in the trial, he said that that was the first time he had seen that video and was completely overcome with emotion and talked about how he didn't understand how anyone could commit an act as evil as that.
As those jurors were there in the courtroom as well, what did they look like?
After the verdict was read, the defense then asked the judge to poll the jury, basically calling on them at random to stand up and testify and say that they indeed agreed willingly to this guilty verdict. A lot of them didn't show much emotion today, but throughout the trial, we did see some of them crying over in the jury box, especially when that video was played of the school shooting. And just a reminder here that Colin's son, Colt Gray, who allegedly carried out this attack, has not gone to trial yet and has not been convicted in the shooting, but now his father has. He has been found guilty of providing his son that gun and has now been convicted of second-degree murder, involuntary manslaughter, and several other charges.
Yeah, a lot of charges for sure. All right, Chelsea Beimfor, thanks for keeping us in the know about what is happening just outside of the courtroom. We'll check back in with you in just a bit. So if you're just joining us right now, we are on the air because Colin Gray, the father of the accused Apalachee High School shooter, has been found guilty on all charges. And mainly here, as we were just in the courtroom, seeing Colin Gray as that verdict was being read, again, not showing a whole lot of emotion right now. But let's take you back some years because we keep saying that this is a landmark case, and this is why. If we take it back to this now only being the nation's second judicial case against the parents of an alleged school shooter, those first parents who were convicted in a U.S. mass school shooting were sentenced to at least 10 years in prison. Now, for some context here, these were two Michigan parents that were the first in the country to be convicted in 2021 for their role in the Oxford High School shooting in 2021 that was committed by their son. This case, in a way, laying a lot of the groundwork of sorts, and Jennifer and James Crumley did not know Ethan Crumley, the son, had a handgun, and he called it his beauty. that was in a backpack when he was dropped off at Oxford High School that day of that shooting. So right now, regarding Colin Gray, he does face up to 180 years in prison as he's been found guilty on all of these charges. Let's bring back, again, Atlanta News First Niamani Watson. She joins us live just outside of the courtroom for more on this case. Niamani, kind of set the stage for a lot of people who may just be tuning in and are trying to figure out how we got to this day.
Well, yeah, so the verdict was reached in less than 2 hours. The jury coming to a quick decision, finding Colin Gray guilty on all 29 charges. Now, over the past 2 weeks, the prosecutors really drove home their claims that Colin ignored multiple warning signs of what they say were red flags about Colt's mental health issues. Over the course of the trial, we saw text messages between Colin and Colt. We saw a photo of a mass shooter on Colt's wall. We also heard from prosecutors that law enforcement visited Colin's home before the shooting at Apalachee High School about accusations of Colt making online school shooting threats. So prosecutors were really driving home that all of these red flags were ignored, and still Colin allowed access to a gun allegedly used in that mass shooting that killed 2 teachers and 2 students, wounding 9 others. We also heard testimony from the teachers and the students during the trial who were shot. They were talking about how they were traumatized by the shooting, their injuries to the shooting, having nightmares and the lasting impacts from that shooting. Meanwhile, we heard from the defense that Colin had no knowledge that his son was planning an alleged mass shooting and should not be held responsible for what his son did. But of course, the jury here siding with prosecutors, saying that Colin is also to blame for this because he did ignore multiple warning signs that his son was dealing with mental health issues and could commit something to this magnitude. Brooks.
Thank you. And if you're just joining us, again, we're coming on the air right now because Colin Gray, the father of the accused Apalachee High School shooter, has been found guilty of all charges. 29 charges is what he was up against, and let's put that on the screen so we can break down these charges for you. He's been charged for murder in the second degree, cruelty to children in the second degree, several counts of cruelty to children in the second degree, several counts of involuntary manslaughter, and again, 29 charges found guilty of all of them. Colin Gray, we just heard from Niamani speaking about what his case was about, because Colt Gray, the teenager who's accused in the Apalachee High School shooting, has not gone to trial yet. That day will come later on. But Colin Gray, the father, was charged with all of these counts, and prosecutors, their whole goal was to lay out him allowing Colt Gray access to that AR-style rifle that investigators say was used there at that school back in 2024. Prosecutors also saying that Colin Gray gave his son Colt Gray access to ammunition as well as accessories, all of which were recovered at that crime scene at Colin Gray's residence. So let's now hear a little bit from Colin Gray as he was on the stand during the testimony. Let's listen to him.
To do something that heinous, like I don't know if anybody could ever see that kind of evil. And it's like the Colt I knew, the relationship I had, there's this whole other side of Colt I didn't know existed.
That was Colin Gray there on the stand as he was testifying in his own trial, giving you a look at some of the surveillance video that was played. This video believed to be the day that that attack happened. And this video shows Colt Gray there in the school. Also, this video here is showing Colt Gray getting off of a bus the day of that shooting. We heard from Chelsea Bymford a little earlier, and as she was saying that the the father, Colin Gray, that might have been the only time in which he's been emotional throughout this entire trial. That was when he was testifying there on the stand and when a very small piece of some of that surveillance video was being showed. As that verdict came down and we were hearing from the jurors about Colin Gray being found guilty on all counts, he didn't show much emotion. We were watching here live in the courtroom and no emotion on his face. And then as he was taken in handcuffs after hearing that verdict, as he was headed back to be escorted out of the courtroom, again, not really any emotion that he was showing there. Now, I do want to let you know that as we give you this live look on the inside of the courthouse right now, we are learning that we could hear from the district attorney to provide us with a statement in just a bit, but we are working to figure out when exactly that would be. But again, we have several crews there in Barrow County, one just inside of the courtroom, another one on the outside of the courtroom as well. And again, for those of you who are just joining us, we're bringing this breaking news live to you on the air where Colin Gray, the father of the accused Apalachee High School shooter, has been found guilty on all charges. Now, let's go back into the courtroom while that testimony was happening, where we heard from Colin Gray regarding some of those weapons that were in in Colt Gray's room.
It wasn't always in his room, and were there times where that rifle was in his room? Yep, there was, and it was just. There was never at any point during all of this leading up to what happened, there was never a perceived threat by me with Colt. You know, I never heard or he never spoke to me about doing anything as drastic as he had done.
So that was Colin Gray talking about those weapons that were recovered there at the scene by authorities the day of that shooting. And it is important to know that Colin Gray was the only witness called by the defense attorneys. He was the only witness called by the defense attorneys. Again, he was grilled by the prosecutors, and there was only one moment in there where he seemed to show that kind of emotion. But one of the things that he did point out while giving his testimony was the fact that he and his son had an opportunity to bond over guns. Those were his words. He said they had an opportunity to bond over guns. And so he did say during his testimony that he didn't really realize something was going on with his son and that a lot of those signs might have actually been missed. And one of the things that he also pointed out, I remember the first day that he was on the stand, he shared that he had been on certain medication. He was going through a lot in his personal life, and there was just a lot happening there in his home. So Colin Gray, saying that because there was so much that was going on in his own life, it was hard to maybe spot some of those things that prosecutors were charging him about regarding what he could have done to stop that shooting from happening. Again, his son, Colt Gray, has not been sentenced in this shooting. Is still accused of carrying out that deadly attack. And I don't know, do we have pictures of the victims? Because on a day like today, it's always easy to talk about what has happened, but sometimes we forget about the lives that were lost. This shooting claiming the lives of 4 people that you see here on your screen. Christian Angulo, who was just 14, he was a student. Mason Schermerhorn, who was also just 14 years old. Coach Richard Aspinwall, who was a teacher and a coach out there, and Christina Irmi, who was another teacher. These were the 4 lives that were lost. There were other people who were hurt and wounded in this shooting, but these were the 4 lives that are lost. And during that testimony, as we heard from some of the students who were on the stand, who were testifying, many of them were saying, still to this day, they have nightmares. Still to this day, they struggle to get to the classroom because they always have the fear of something like this happening once again. So again, even on a day like today where Colin Gray has been found guilty on all accounts, it's important to remember those lives that were lost in this tragic attack. So Colin Gray, again, found guilty on all charges. That is the biggest development right now. It did not take jurors but about 2 hours to come up with a verdict. They were able to reach that verdict, and then they brought that news to the courtroom. We've had crews there on the inside of the courtroom, also on the outside, and we are going to continue our coverage throughout the day, where we continue to bring more of what we saw on the inside of the courtroom. That'll be on Atlanta News First at noon. And remember, you can always catch up on the latest updates about this story and any other big headline that we have on AtlantaNewsFirst.com and on the free Atlanta News First app. Again, for those of you just joining us, Colin Gray found guilty on all charges in the shooting that happened at Apalachee High School regarding, again, let's give you those charges one more time before we go, and we're going to see you back here for Atlanta News First at noon. Colin Gray found guilty on all charges. We'll see you back here at noon.
All right. Looks like they're wrapping up, so we shall wrap up as well. If there is any kind of press conference, we'll try and grab it, and we will show it. We'll either show it on its own, or we'll wait till sentencing. We'll show it then. But I think that's going to be it. I think that's going to be it for Colin Gray. We're going to turn our attention over to Corey Richins now. But before we go, I just want to absolutely acknowledge the victims: Richard Aspinwall, Christina Irami, Mason Schermerhorn, I should say, sorry, and Christian Angulo. So acknowledge the victims for sure. And also want to thank Kuda Girl for being in the courtroom, being our eyes in the courtroom. I want to thank our mods for all the hard work that they did during this emotional trial. And I want to thank Erin for all the hard work that she did on the back end, behind the scenes, as always. And I want to thank you guys for being with us. This was a very highly charged, emotional trial. It will set precedent, absolutely, 100%, which is one of the reasons why we wanted to watch it. But I want to thank you guys for being courteous to each other, respecting each other's opinions. We all have our different opinions on this, but I think by and large, everybody was very respectful of that. So huge thank you to you guys. We have a redirect for Corey Richins. We are now going to be full on Corey Richins until she's over with, or we'll definitely cover the sentencing of Colin Gray. So thank you guys for your support. Thank you for being with us, watching with us. And with that, I will say join us over at Corey Richins, and we'll see you for sentencing. Whenever a date is set for Colin Gray, we will watch the sentencing. So take care, guys. Thanks again. Bye.